What's up, fam? Michael Fabber here, UnleashU Now, with another great interview with Andrés Valencia. If you knew how many times it took for me to be able to do that, you would laugh and make fun of me, but it doesn't make this person any less amazing. A CEO, entrepreneur, a trainer, a speaker, and a coach. I added things in because he tries to be so humble and kind to all of us. All right? Thank you so much for taking time to do this for people, man. I really appreciate it. All of us here at UnleashU Now appreciate you for doing it.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me.
No, anytime. You already know I'll interview every day if you let me.
Awesome.
All right.
Let me know the time. I'll be here.
Perfect. We're going to do daily interviews. Same people. It'll be very exciting every time. I believe we have enough stories to do it.
I think so. Yeah.
So everybody that's watching you, right? Everybody gets to check this out and see you and see the value you're going to add. But before we get into that, really, I want them just to know a little bit about you, who you are, what you're about, what you're doing here, and how you got to this point.
Okay, cool. Thanks. So people listening to my voice will notice that I have a slight accent. I'm not originally from the United States. Wait, what? Yes.
Right.
I'm originally from the Netherlands. Both my parents are from Chile, where my mom, well, let's start with my dad. My dad is 100% Chilean. That's easy. My mom was born in Chile from a Dutch father and a Spanish mother. And her mom was born in Spain from a Dutch father and a Spanish mother. So that makes me fourth generation immigrant because I was born in the Netherlands, moved to Chicago out of love for a Chicago girl. That didn't work out, but I'm still here. So okay. That's the logistics of how I got here, how I got into what I do now, which is I'm a coach, I'm a trainer. I support both individuals building the life that they love, and I support heart-centered leaders, or servant leaders is I think a more corporate term, really build a team that is effective, that is productive, that is profitable, and really serves their clients or their patients. I do a lot of work in healthcare.
Nice, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So why does that resonate with you so much, the servant leader, the heart-centered?
That's a really good question. I think that there's a couple of things. My grandfather, I think, was a caring leader, a servant leader, and I've got a story to tell on him, which I love to share. So you'll see that I'm full of stories. I think that early on in my career, I worked at the Ritz-Carlton, and the Ritz-Carlton has a strengths-based approach to leadership. And I was in my early 20s when I worked there. And I worked for what I consider to be the first male heart-centered leader. And he showed me that you could be wildly successful as a heart-centered leader or as a servant leader. And I experienced myself what it was like to work for this guy. And so I know, and I had the opportunity 20 years later to share with him the impact that he's had on my leadership style. And I know that that's what I want to create for the people that I work with. And I support leaders in building that environment, that culture where the individual matters, they bring their strengths. And when you have that and you know that you're appreciated, you can also have a conversation about the stuff that doesn't work, that isn't going well, but it's built on a foundation of trust. Knowing that this guy appreciates me, or guy or woman appreciates me, has the best interest, my best interest at heart, as well as the organization's best interest. And then the conversations about the stuff that doesn't work well are also welcomed and done in this foundation of trust. So
I dig it.
You dig it? Cool.
Now, one, that's awesome that you got to tell him. I love that you got to let him know how much he meant to you and the impact he made on you. It's always great being able to express and let the people know that pushed you in a direction that really expanded and touched you in a way that's so positive, and now is impacting others the same way. It's great when you get to go back and tell that person that they did that. So that's awesome. Second, what's the story?
So I got lots of stories, but let me tell you the story about how my mom was born in Chile. And so my grandfather, a tall Dutch guy, he was 6'6", was his family was Jewish up until the 1900s. Then they had all boys, and I think none of them married a Jewish lady. So he had some Jewish ancestry. I don't know if that was the reason, but for some reason he was taken a prisoner by the Germans during the Second World War. He was put to work at a work camp. And by the time that the Second World War was over and he was freed, he got back to his old job, which was at a company that dealt with everything that we take from the ground. So iron ore, metals, those type of things. And he told them, he's like, great, happy to be here, but I'm not so happy to be in Europe. I'm kind of done with this continent for now. Just send me as far away as possible as you can. And they said, wonderful, we have an iron ore mine in Chile where we need a leader. How do you feel about that? He's great. I don't speak a word of Spanish, but it's far from Europe. I'll take it. And so he didn't speak a word of Spanish. He had to take Spanish lessons. And there was this particularly charming Spanish lady, half Dutch, half Spanish. You see where this is going. He studied with her Spanish besides his work in the evenings for 6 months or however long. Both of them fell in love. He moved to Chile and by letter proposed to her. This is 1947, 1948 that we're talking about. There is no Skype. There's not the technology that you and I are using today, right? So by letter, he proposed to her. She accepted. She got on a ship, which was a freight ship, not the Queen Mary II, like cool ocean cruiser, right? A freight ship. An incredibly smart lady, way ahead of her time. It took her 3 months to go from Rotterdam, where she boarded the ship, to Valparaiso in Chile. And the captain of this ship, a very wise man as well, said, you know what, you're here to marry the man of your dreams. The guy being very practical, he said, I'm going to marry the two of you on my ship, which is the captain of a ship he's allowed to do. So on December 24th, 1948, he married the two and they started their life in Chile. And they started their life in Chile. My grandfather as the director of a mine, my grandmother being a trained nurse, and a lot of other things in this community where the nearest hospital was at least a 2 hours drive. So she delivered all the babies in that community. My grandfather was a soccer aficionado. So the team worked 6 days a week, and on Sundays they played the soccer tournaments, and they played soccer against other soccer teams in that part of the country. And on the day that my mom was born, he started and founded the soccer club El Algarrobo. El Algarrobo is the name of the town in Chile. And he founded that club. So awesome. It becomes relevant for later in the story, right? My grandparents built that community. At a certain point, they had a bunch of kids and they needed to go somewhere where there was a school closer. So they moved to Santiago. My grandfather founded the Chilean Dutch Chamber of Commerce and did a lot of work there. So I come from a pretty entrepreneurial background, at least at that moment. And I'm going to fast forward a couple of decades where my mom is writing a book about her life. And my mom has had a fascinating life. So she's written her book and she wants to do some fact checking. So her and my dad go to Chile. They drive from Santiago up north to El Algarrobo, to the mine. So that's where my mom pretty much grew up for the first number of years of her life. And the mine is no longer being exploited, but it's still being guarded. So she talks to the security guard and says, hey, I'm so-and-so. Could you, can I look around? And the guy says, look, I can lose my job because of showing you around, but I'll show you around. I probably shouldn't be saying this on a recording. So perfect. She gets the tour with my dad and they get back in the car with the idea of driving back to Santiago. They get into a spin. The car goes over its head, lands back on its wheels. Here's a commercial for a Volvo because both my parents were absolutely fine. There was some shattered glass. My mom had something in her hand. She takes that out, dusts off her clothes, and that's it. but the car is wrecked, right? So now they have to call whatever service you call in Chile to get the car towed. They have to go into the town, El Algarrobo. My mom is walking down the street and this gentleman walks up to her and says, I'm so sorry to bother you, but you look a lot like someone that I used to work for. Do you happen to know Don Macario? And she says, yes, that's my father. And he asks, well, how is he? And she says, well, he passed away by now. And the guy starts sobbing in the middle of the street and says, I've never had such a good boss that I've worked for. And you should do yourself a favor and go to that and that street where now is Club Deportivo El Algarrobo, Sports Club El Algarrobo. And so she takes his advice, goes there, and at the entrance of the Sports Club El Algarrobo, there is a massive photo of my grandfather as founder and first president of the sports club. And my grandparents, who at some point had to leave Chile for a completely different reason, had absolutely no idea the impact that they've had on this community. They're still being remembered as people who were very influential, who had a tremendous impact. My grandmother helped deliver, I think, over 12 babies in the period of time that they were there. And this community now is a small, let's say a village, a small city, a village. Mm-hmm. But they are still remembered as people who were very influential, very caring, that had a massive impact on them. So that's part of that story.
I love that. That's amazing. And I talk about something called the impact theory. And it's about don't die twice kind of thing, where people always will mention your name because of the impact in which you had, right? So you live on. And that's awesome to see how they still live on because of what they did when they were here. That's an awesome story. Good pick. I'm glad I asked that question.
And I think they died clueless. I don't think they knew the impact that they had, which I think is one of the drivers why I'm very much motivated to let people know the impact that they've had on me and support leaders in letting the individual know what impact people have.
Right. I dig that. I'm liking it.
Cool.
Right.
Cool.
So I'm going to direct this in a different direction. We're going to do a little like 180-ish type move here.
Cool. Bring it.
All right. So in this time, there's no secret, right? We all know what's going on. We all know millions and millions of people can't even really leave their home. They're not supposed to be. They're quarantined, stay home orders, right? A lot of jobs lost, right? There's so many different levels to the situation that we're facing right now, from the health concern to the financial concern to the family structure concern, right? To the future concern, right? Like there's so many different levels to it on. And when this could be so overwhelming, right? So when you really start breaking it down and breaking it down and breaking it down, there's so many moving parts. So in this time, and being the servant leader type, the heart center type, what kind of, what are you saying to people that you get in front of that are experiencing this and questioning next moves? What should I do? Where should I go? How should I be? Right? What are you kind of saying to them to at least for them to think to get out of the funk?
I think that there's a number of different things. So I've done a lot of work in healthcare. I worked at large academic medical centers. And in a previous life, before I was a coach, I was also part of the crisis team when H1N1 was going around.
Okay.
So the Mexican flu, and I don't have any medical background. I was working there. My job was to make sure that there were masks. That was so from a support services perspective, very important. Yeah. But that was my role, my tiny little role as part of that. But because of that, I'm still very much interested in what's going on. And I think that what's really important to keep in mind is the reason why we're keeping our distance. So keeping our distance is really important. And why it's important, it's not to avoid getting sick, but it's to avoid getting sick all at once, so that we don't overexert the resources that we have in hospitals, so that those few people, it's not going to be a lot, those few people who need incredible amounts of medical attention, that it's available to them, right? So I had I was listening to this podcast from a Spanish doctor, and he broke it down. So don't quote me on the statistics. I'm repeating what I heard. So all that disclaimer there. But he said, out of the 100 people who get sick, 80% will be fine. 20% will be very sick. Out of those 20%, 15 will just be miserable, but will get better. And 5 will need hospitalization. And out of those 5, 5 will need to be on the ICU. Out of those 5, 3 will get better, 2 will die. So again, don't quote me on the statistics, but the majority of the people will be absolutely fine if they get it. But we don't want to contaminate, be a vector, as it's called, to others. So it's really important to keep that part in mind. Is why are we sitting at home being isolated, right? It's to make sure that we don't transmit something that could have been avoided.
Right. I dig that.
So with that, we have permission to watch Netflix or whatever it is that you want to do while you're isolated, and you'll be doing a whole lot of people a favor if you're a carrier of this.
100%. And you know what's funny is I don't think anyone really talks about that angle you just said about the amount of response people will need if we don't take this serious enough to listen to some things and put ourselves in the back burner for a minute and just let this play out a little bit. So it spreads it out, but spreads it out in a form so we can take care of it. So we're saving more lives, preventing more loss, right? Things of that nature. And doing that makes it harder for you to get sick. And like you said, spread it to others. Which I always say like that's my greatest fear. Is because I have a mom that's 70 plus, and I have a daughter that's 16 younger. So it's like I don't want to be the reason why someone else gets sick, and I definitely don't want to be the reason why my family gets sick.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
So the angle you just said there is an interesting angle. I haven't heard anyone say that one, but it's so true. Okay. So we can have the good response, the proper response needed. Right. The issue we're having with the medical field is because the massive need, we didn't have that response ready.
Yep.
Even though we're ready for everything that happens.
Even though everything happens, Even though everything happens at a time and for a reason, and we can learn from it. All that is true. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So now that was great. I love that. The second part I'll ask you is, what about the person that's going through this? Right. There's people struggling right now. We know that.
Yeah.
And it's going to be struggling in so many different ways. There's the struggling because their life has changed. There's the struggling because of the financial restraints. There's the struggling because of isolation, because we're taking that social isolation too far and making it like we can't interact with people. Clearly we're interacting, right? And and we all know from being in the coach world and mental health space that isolation can lead to more detrimental behaviors and thoughts of oneself that can lead then to self-injurious behaviors. And we really want to try to stop that by any means necessary. But so my thing is, someone that's just starting to feel this and just starting to think this, and they're in it now, what are you saying to them?
Yeah. So I'll say two different things. The first one is, I think we got the name all wrong. It's called social distancing when I don't think I've been more social in my life, right? We should have called it physical distancing. And we can still be social. You and I are still social. I am pretty sure the moment that you and I see each other in person, we'll say hello with a big, strong hug.
Yeah, right.
So that's the part we can do at this moment, right? Other than the fact that I live in a different part of the country than you are right now, but I haven't hugged anyone in a really long time. So that's the part we got to forego now. That doesn't mean we can't be social. So that's one thing to keep in mind. The other part, if someone is struggling, if they are having a really hard time, it's okay, right? We can't always be up or pretend to be fine. And that's honestly the biggest gift you can give yourself, is allow yourself to feel down, to feel in that struggle. Because if you're here and you start yourself feeling down, if you allow yourself to go down, you'll find your way back up. But if you try to suppress this and you're like, okay, I can't go down, you're going to stay stuck at this level. So there's a few things that I often talk about with my clients, and that is allow yourself to feel the feelings, right? So a little bit of theory. We've got the difference between feelings and sensations, or feelings and emotions. You got to get the right difference between feelings and emotions. Feelings are the sensations we have in our body. And emotion is the label that we put on it.
Okay.
So, yeah, cool. Simon Sinek, I'm a huge Simon Sinek guy, a fan. He wrote the book Start With Why, and he's got this one video, and he was talking, and I think it was shot during the time of the Winter Olympics, and he was talking about the questions that journalists ask, specifically around feelings or emotions. And so apparently the journalist asked the athlete who trained for 4 years, did the giant slalom ski thing. Right? The moment that he was down after his run, the journalist asked, were you nervous when you were on top of that hill? Right? And the athlete said, no, I wasn't. Then what he was experiencing was something that mere mortals, and I will identify as a mere mortal, I don't know where you're at, might identify as nerves, which is he had sweaty hand palms. His heart was beating fast, right? So that was pounding. His belly was doing a lot of different things. So call them butterflies, whatever you want to call them, right? I would label that as nervous. So the sensations in his body were there, but he labeled it as, I was excited. Right? So the sensations in our body is what happens in our body. How we label it is the emotion. That's the stuff. So here's the thing. When feelings come up, it follows this pattern every single time. Something happens, something comes up, it reaches its peak, it goes down. Then if we allow that to happen, that thing lasts 90 seconds. This is from a book by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, Harvard brain scientist, My Stroke of Insight, also a great book. What we as men are really good at doing, but I think as human beings we are, is something comes up, it feels uncomfortable, so we suppress it. And maybe you've heard the expression, what you resist persists. So this uncomfortable feeling comes up, we suppress it, and now it can turn into a mood. And that mood can last an afternoon, it can last a week, it can last a month, it can last years. To me, that's the importance of feeling our feelings, right? So allowing it to come up. And I'm a huge fan of the Conscious Leadership Group. They wrote a book called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. Commitment number 3 is feel your feelings all the way to completion. And they say, if a feeling comes up, you allow it all to feel, then you've got wisdom or insight at the end of that. Wouldn't it be cool if you can take action based on all those feelings that you felt? But then, so you're experiencing, they differentiate 5 core feelings, which is fear, anger, sadness, joy, and sexual feelings or creative feelings. So those 5, and each of them have their own wisdom, right? If you're feeling anger and you allow yourself to feel angry because you can't see your mom, because you're both stuck, whatever that is, right? Allow yourself to feel that, and then take action on the insight that's there. That is, you know what, I feel that life has been unfair to me and crossed the boundary by not allowing me to see my mom and taking care of them. Okay, now how can I right that? How can I make that better? When we're stuck in this feeling of all the anger, we can't take action. But when we have the wisdom of, hey, there was a boundary crossed because I have a value that is, I have to be there for my family, and that one was crossed. Okay, now I have access to my creativity and say, how can I, in my current situation, still honor that value of taking care for my family? And human beings are incredibly resourceful and creative. So we will find a way to take care of them.
That was deep.
Tell me what you think of that.
I love it, dude. There's so many gems in that. What you just said, there's so many. Like I go back to almost like right at the beginning when you were talking about you try hard to fight so you don't go down, and how dangerous that is, because when you lose that fight, because at some point you will, because that feeling's going to stay there. Right, like that.
I got something to say about that. Yeah.
All right, and so before we keep going, say it. So the danger of that when that happens, and that's going to come up at some point, right? And it's that battle you fight. What was your thoughts when breaking that down a little bit? You just said you had something good to say. I want you to say.
So one of the reasons I love the work that the Conscious Leadership Group does, and they don't pay me, I don't have any shares, I'm just a huge fan. I think they hit on something that resonated with me so deeply. When you read their book or you attend any of their workshops, they will start by saying we have a very simple and incomplete model of what a conscious leader is. And they draw a horizontal line. And so their book is that there are 15 commitments, 15, that makes a conscious leader. And you can either honor that commitment, so you're above the line, or you don't honor that commitment, so you're below the line. Here's their definition of a conscious leader. A conscious leader is not someone who honors all 15 commitments, so someone who's always above the line. But frankly, it would be impossible and exhausting. There would be no fun in that. There would be no humanity in that, right? They say our definition of a conscious leader is someone who has the awareness of where they are at any given moment related to those commitments. So they're either honoring the commitment or choosing not to honor the commitment. And what makes a conscious leader is the awareness of, hey, you know what, when it comes to whatever commitment number 1 is be curious, commitment number 2, I'm blanking on that one, commitment number 3 is feel your feelings all the way to completion, right? If a conscious leader is someone who knows where they're at, then you have permission to be below the line. You have permission to be unenlightened. You have permission to be, have all these feelings, to not be your best self at any given moment, right? To not be thoughtful, to suppress your feelings. You have permission to do all of that. Mm. And with that, you have permission to be human, because that's what we are, right?
Right.
I'm a coach. I support people in living their lives in a very deliberate way. That does not mean I don't get angry. That does not mean I don't swear. That does not mean I don't get offended. I do all of that. And because of the model that I just described, that was the first time that I'm like, and I have permission to do that. I don't have to be fucking perfect.
Damn right.
So
I like that. And that idea of like holding that feeling down, right? From experience from experience just in my own life, forget about clients, forget about people I know, right? Family. It's just in my own life. When you try to do that, one, it's exhausting to yourself, right? Because you're always trying, you don't know when it's going to come up. Little things can trigger you, little things will bring you back to that moment, bring you back to that being that person, and you're trying to hide it, right? So when you're trying to hide, you're disguising, right? And that means that everything, so there's 2 parts of this, right? There's the inside part and the outside part for me. The inside part's going to be that internal fight you have, struggle from trying to push that down and not show that that's part of you, and show the part that you want people to see, or you want to be liked for, or you want to be part of. That causes hell of inner turmoil. That causes dis-ease, which there's a reason why disease is called disease, which is dis-ease, right? And that normally will cause conflict inside the body. The other part is the conflict in which it causes outside the body. And what I say by that is, I mean this: if I'm hiding pieces of me, right? If I'm hiding things that affect me, that things that shape me, the things that made me who I am, and I'm hiding that person, then I can never be loved for being that person, accepted for being that person, embraced for being that person, right? Challenged for being that person. All these things that I need to be able to grow as a person. So my relationships are never going to be as fulfilling as they should be, right? My interactions are never going to be as fulfilling as they should be, right? Like in every area, relationships of all kinds are not going to be, no one will ever be the friend that I need them to be inside, because they don't know this side because I hid it, right? Like no significant other will ever be what I need them to be for me, right? Because they don't know they need to, they never get to evolve to be that because I don't show them.
Yeah.
Right. And it's so many times when I know people, and including myself, like when you talk about relationships not working and it's like, well, this person and this person and this person. And it's like, after you go through like 5 people, it's probably you. Right. Like, right.
There's
Yeah.
one common denominator.
Right. Right. And it's so when it's that point, it's like we have to understand if we don't put all of us out there, we'll never receive what we need. We'll receive pieces of it, but not the whole thing. So you're causing a struggle in both ways. You're going to have the struggle within, and you're going to have the struggle without, because you're never going to get what your soul needs.
Absolutely. So it's the analogy that I use is if you wear a mask, you'll be attracting people who like the mask. But the mask is an innate object. It is lifeless, right? And so there's not that satisfaction that you're talking about. And taking the mask off, however scary and uncomfortable and all those things, right? But that's where the genuine connection comes in, that people can actually say, you know what, I see you and I like you, or I see you and you're not my kind of, not my flavor.
We don't vibe.
Yeah. And that's cool, but wearing that mask and keeping that mask on takes a ton of engaged energy. It's exhausting. So.
And we've all been that person. We've all had a mask at some point, right? We've all some people are like, no, it's like I've always been real. I'm like, no, stop it, right? Like,
I think that people,
times we all have done it.
And you're saying it in past tense, right? I think at any moment in our life we play a role, right? When you go back home, you play the role of son, and there's something expected of you in a certain way, and that may be who you are authentically, but it may also be that it's projected on you. Well, as a son, you should behave this way. As a brother, you should behave this way. And you might fit in that mold for a little bit and go like, hey, this doesn't feel as comfortable anymore. Now I got to change. It's something that we all do. As a shopper, you play a certain role.
Right. Now, what you said there, I love, because it's twofold, right? Listen, I have an aunt who literally will always see me as that 16-year-old punk ass kid I was, right? She will always see me, no matter what I do, no matter how many different things I do, no matter how, like different people I try to impact, different people I try to help, different organizations I try to be part of. I'll always be a punk ass 16-year-old kid doing nothing good, and people should look out for me. I'll always be that dude. And what I had to accept was that she's not going to see me with that mask off, because that mask was protecting me from something. Right? It was protecting me from what I didn't want people to know about me, to see the real me, right? To see me naked in a way. And so she's never going to see that mask off of me, even though it's off of me now. And it's the two things I can do, right? I can have her be part of my life, understanding that, and not let it keep hitting me like I'm running into a wall. Or if I can't do that, then I have to figure out if that relationship is worth having or severing. Right. And it's what you said was so true about that, is that certain parts, they're not, even if you're being authentically you and you're not playing a role, some might still just not accept you in that role. Some might not believe you're that person, you're that thing, right? That's not what you're about. And there's nothing you can do about it other than those two decisions. It's worth fighting and figuring it out, or it's not worth fighting and figuring it out. We're going to move on.
Yeah. And so, to me, that's part of that wisdom that comes after what I'm imagining might be anger, when you have the awareness or that interaction and go like, why does she not accept me for who I am? And you experience that anger, you go through that, and then the wisdom is, hey, there's something that's no longer of service that needs to be severed. And it's that relationship, and not easy.
Nope.
Painful, most likely, right?
Either way is going to be.
But then you're at choice instead of like, and you can take action based on the wisdom of anger without you being angry. It doesn't have to be a white knuckle thing slamming up doors. But just say, you know what, and this no longer works for me. Our relationship is draining. And so I'm going to stick to sending you a Christmas card once a year, and that'll be it for now. And whether you have that conversation or you just make that decision on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's everything you're doing, your energy flows through it. So you have to, whatever it is, you have to figure out and make the commitment to yourself where that energy is worth flowing.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, I mean, doing something simple as watching Netflix, like we talked about earlier, or playing a video game, there's energy flowing to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I'll make jokes about me. When I was younger, video games were worth a lot of energy when I was younger. I got to release some to it. I felt some from it. Right.
Yeah.
And now it's not worth a lot of energy. Right. Like if it's going rough, it's not worth going. Right. Because it's not that important to me anymore to flow that energy through it, to have my body, because my body's producing that energy.
Yeah.
And I'd rather it flow towards something that means more now. But that's the growth, the evolution. But it's just like that with relationships, with hobbies, with, careers or professions, everything, your energy is flowing towards it.
Yeah.
Right. So what are some things people can do? What are some things you would recommend someone doing? Like, let's say you had a client, right? And they're going through the feelings, right? And they're trying to complete that feeling, right?
Yeah.
What are some ways for them to stay the path to get to be able to complete that feeling? What does that look like? So someone can have some kind of idea of running into that.
So thanks for asking that. It's a simple 5-step process.
Nice. There you go. Yeah. I love 5-step
Simple
process.
doesn't always mean easy.
Never does.
but it is simple, right? Let's go with the theory from the conscious leadership group that there's 5 core emotions, right? Fear, anger, sadness, joy, or sexual feelings or creative feelings. Step 1 is define the core emotion that you're feeling, right? One of those: sad, anger, fear, joy, sexual feelings. Then locate that sensation in your body. So it could be in our chest, it could be in our belly, it could be in our head, right? Describe that sensation and think of it as bits, as zeros and ones that are doing something in your body, and try to describe it in a way that, it's twisting, it's popping, it is tightening, it's swirling, it's expanding, it is flowing. So try to describe it. Again, not easy, but fairly simple. Then step 3, important, just take a few deep breaths and breathe as deep into your belly as you can and be aware of what those feelings are doing. Step 4, ask yourself, if I can allow this to be there, can I allow those feelings to be there, or those sensations? Can I accept those sensations to be there? Can I appreciate these sensations that I'm feeling? Right? So can I allow it? Can I accept it? Can I appreciate it? Number 5 is what I think is the coolest one. You need all these 4 steps to get to this point. And that is express the feelings through either a sound or a movement in your body, to just experience that energy, that feeling in your body. Right? So right now I'm feeling some tightness in my shoulders. Probably got a little bit nervous having to explain this and wanting to get it right, right? So I'm noticing this tense in my neck, right? I'll take a deep breath in it, still there, right? Can I accept that I'm feeling that? Well, yeah, I'm talking about it live on this recording. I can definitely accept it. Can I allow it to be there? Yeah, definitely it's there, right? Can I appreciate it? Hell yeah, this comes at the perfect time to demonstrate this technique, right? So now what does my body want to express? Actually, it wants to just, and that's what I needed to do. And now I feel that flowing through my arms, but I also feel that tension that was here just dissipating. And I feel a little bit of a rush, right? And now what's possible that might happen is I'm going to get a second wave of feelings in my body that I can demonstrate in that exact same way, that I can go in that exact same way. What it does is it frees up that energy that is there, right? The tension here is now gone, it's flowing. If I would not have done anything with it, it could have turned into a headache, right? I know I'm prone to get tension headaches, so if I don't release that, this just may have prevented me from a headache. That's what it looks like.
I dig it. I was doing the breaths for a long time. After you said deep breaths into your belly, I was like, I'm going to try that.
Cool. Yeah.
I was like,
anything
nice.
You're experiencing right now in your body?
Nope.
Okay, cool.
I was doing the deep breaths. I was just like, I think it made, I don't take deep breaths enough, I think. So like it made me feel that I was doing it. I felt the difference. I was just like, It's kind of, when I identified that and you were talking, I was just like, because I was just like, oh, I get what he's saying. Because it did. It made me feel it differently. And then made me recognize different parts of me.
Yeah. Cool.
So I dig it, man. Dig it.
Nice. So that's what it is.
I love it. 5-step process to get through the feels, to know you're complete. That's pretty badass that it can be knocked down to that. Like you said, simple, not easy.
Simple, not easy. And there's wisdom at the end of it. I was talking to a client who is a mom, a lawyer in one of the like big law firms. Expectation, because of the type of law that she practices, is that when she gets a call, she delivers by 8 a.m. the next morning, meaning that by the time that I talked to her a few weeks ago, she'd been going 5 days on 3 hours of sleep. Right? And the reason we were talking is I don't know if I can keep this up. So she's feeling all this tension, happened to also be in her neck. And I have her go through these steps, right? She lets out a growl, and with that releases a whole lot of things. And then she gets the wisdom of, I can't keep up with this. My family is way more important. And there is wisdom in that moment as to the choices that she needs to make. I'm really simplifying a longer conversation, but there's wisdom in your body that can help you make decisions. And that's what we access through that part.
I dig it.
Yeah, cool.
Now, let me ask you, you got people's attention. They're here, they're listening to you. What's something do you think that isn't being said much or not being said at all that you think it's important for them to hear?
Around what?
Anything. Anything they could be going through right now, and then you think it's important for them to know, to hear, to experience, to digest, to be in the moment, whatever it is. I put no restrictions on this. You could be anywhere you want it to be.
Awesome. I love it. I'm going to preface this with a quote from Mr. Rogers.
Nice.
I was brought up in the Netherlands. I did not grow up with Mr. Rogers. I'm developing a man crush on the guy. Seriously.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing.
So this one, I was, before the whole quarantine thing, I was on a flight and I saw the Tom Hanks movie where he's portraying Mr. Rogers. And Mr. Rogers says this. It relates to the movie. I won't give the movie away, but he says, to die is human, and anything human is mentionable, and anything mentionable is manageable. And to me, I wrote that down. It made an impression on me, right? Because we are living in this world where social media shows how cool everything is, right? And I'm guilty of that too. If I'm in a place with palm trees, I will show palm trees. We talked before our call about my fake screen here behind me, right? So I'm portraying this beautiful environment behind me. This is not where I live, obviously. If I can do this with this. So we all do this, but we see the world on social media and we get some anxiety. We get this paranoia, the idea of I should be different. And what I'm inviting people to do is to just be, right? Don't do, we're human beings, is to just be with the shitty feelings. I don't typically identify feelings as shitty or as positive as negative. They're not good or bad. We all have them, and we got to go through the entire spectrum of it. I also am I'm convinced that we all have gifts and talents that make us unique and that have us contribute to this world. Find that stuff that brings you joy. Find that stuff that comes easy and natural to you, that makes you uniquely you. Because it is through doing those things that you get energized. And that's the energy that you need to keep moving to deal with everything that we call life. But it's important to fill that cup, right? I got this nugget of wisdom from someone on NPR who said, we know people who are glass half full and glass half empty kind of people. And he said, it doesn't matter if you're a glass half full or glass half empty kind of person, as long as you can take a step back, locate the pitcher, and fill that cup, right? And you can't give from an empty cup. You got to give from the overflow. So however it is that you energize, that you recharge those batteries, that you find the joy, that's the stuff that you need to keep going. I'm not a Pollyanna that says, oh, everything will be fine, everything will be beautiful. But I am a firm believer in a strength-based approach so that you know what you do particularly well, so that that energy just charges your battery and you can keep going.
I dig it. So everyone that's come on here so far, I gave them the option, right? Because a lot of people are heart-centered and giving, right? Mm-hmm. Especially at this time, to give to the people listening something that they can take advantage of, use, process to get to a better position or a better state. And I would like to give you the same honor. Anything you would like to offer to anybody in this time that they could come to you with?
Cool. Awesome. Thank you. So if what I shared resonated with you and you want to have a longer conversation with me, I'll give Mike the link to, I'm talking to you directly. If what I shared resonated with you, I'll give Mike the link for a 15-minute conversation. And I promise you, you'll walk away with one tangible thing you can do throughout that day. And if you like that, we can continue the conversation later on.
I love it. I love it. Listen, I mean, hell, I'll do it because
cool.
You impacted me today. Awesome. So that's right. Now tell everybody where they can find you, because I know after dropping so many nuggets, people are going to want to have more conversations with you.
Awesome. So my email address is Andres, so Andres, @deliberateBreakthroughs.com. Shoot me an email. You'll find me on LinkedIn, Andrés Valencia, or on Facebook as well as Andrés Valencia. And I'm really looking forward to connecting.
Andrés Valencia, it was a pleasure. And
it's an honor. Thanks so much for having me.
Oh, thank you. I actually got it right at the end.
Yes, you did. You nailed it, man. You nailed it.
You. I tried hard. I said it 15 times in my head while you were talking. Just kept saying it, so it would hopefully come out the last time. And it worked better than it did to start. Listen, you're an amazing man. What I've learned about you in the last couple of weeks, floored by your story, your generosity, and who you are as a person. Really appreciate you taking the time and doing this. My pleasure. Thanks so much for creating this platform. Oh, appreciate anytime, man. Any platform I got, you got. Awesome. Thank you. As always, UnleashU Now, fam. Till next time, peace, love, and happiness. Peace. We out.